Hey FaithPoint, I am really excited because today I get to welcome our speaker for the day. His name is Josh Wunderlich. He is a student at Leonardtown High School where he is a wrestler and a leader and also a member of First Saints United Methodist Church, where he gives guidance there as he continues to see what it is to follow God in everything that he does. So we were able to catch up with Josh over the summer. He worked as a kitchen staff member for Camp Manadokin, and as he did that, he kind of explains the importance for him of food ministry and what that means, as well as then taking that experience that he had this summer and how he might then use that in other situations or when he goes home to bless other people. Josh is this wonderful example of hearing the call to go and serve. And what a perfect message as we are into this third worship experience for our Base Camp series, where we are talking about the way that God calls each and every one of us to serve one another and to go into the world and make disciples. So without any more interruption or time, I'm going to turn it over to Josh, and you are going to hear his contagious passion for serving God and meeting the needs of other people. Thanks a lot. I know that you're going to be blessed by this.
Hi, my name is Josh Wunderlich. I work at Manadokin Camp Retreat Center as a kitchen aide. This is where I work. Part of working in the food ministry is just being kind of backstage. We don't really get as much face time with campers. We just kind of stay back here and we do the dishes and we set up for stuff. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but to me, it's a very, very important part of ministry. For example, there's a lot of times in the Bible that there's food plays an important part. For example, one of the better known ones is Jesus feeding the 5,000. 5,000 people were sitting on a hill watching Jesus and listening to Jesus preach. And they all started to get hungry, which is a natural reaction. So the disciples all started freaking out because all these people were getting hungry and they didn't have money to buy them food. But Jesus, being Jesus, worked a miracle with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and fed 5,000 people until they were full with extra to spare. Another example is in the Old Testament when Joseph was working as like the head food distributor for Egypt. He would never have seen his family again if that hadn't have happened. And that happened because of the dreams that God granted him to earn Pharaoh's favor. Like I said, I already talked about how kitchen names are kind of backstage, but like I said, it's a very, very important part of a camp experience. Because if campers come here, they're not really sure what to expect. Because a lot of them are first-time campers. And they're not really sure about the people that are here. They're like, oh, what happens if the food's terrible? And I can say from personal experience, our food is not terrible. They're going to remember either way if your food is bad or good. If your food is bad, they're going to go home and say, oh, the food was terrible, I don't ever want to come back, I'm going to tell all my friends not to go. But if your food is amazing, they're going to go home and be like, the food was fantastic, I had a great time, everything else was fantastic, I'm going to invite all my friends and come back next year. And part of that is having a great kitchen and having good food and having good kitchen service. Because you're a lot more open to stuff when your belly is full of a nice warm meal and you're hydrated or you drank a lot of juice and you just feel good. Because when you're hungry, you get kind of agitated or you get kind of tired and you don't really want to do anything. And so that makes hiking and going rafting and going to the pool and swimming or just kind of just playing games around the campsite a lot harder and a lot more effort, much more effort. So by having a great meal, you are prepping yourself almost to go out into the day. Another reason food service is so great is, like I mentioned, kids love to be full. So, and sitting around the table eating a meal together is a time for them to discuss what happened during their day. So they could share an experience they had on a hike or on a river trip that they thought was hilarious or that they definitely saw God in that moment. Churches all around the globe have coffee fellowship after a sermon. Their congregation can sit around and share a cup of coffee or eat a few donuts and just talk about the sermon or talk about what happened in the past week. Small groups, whenever they go and read scripture and talk about it. a lot of times they meet at restaurants early in the morning or whenever they have an opportunity to, and discuss parts of the scripture over coffee or a sandwich from Panera. It really is an integral part of ministry, and knowing that even though we're not really on the front lines doing everything that the resource staff would do here at camp, our job is as important, because like I said, without great food you don't really have a great camp experience. And it makes me feel like I'm doing a great ministry, knowing that I can make these campers' weeks better, and knowing that I can come back from working this summer and make the coffee fellowship at my church better, and go to small group and make that better just by sharing my experiences in the kitchen. And it makes me feel like I'm doing a great thing here, because knowing that I've provided these campers with a sense of comfort and happiness and eagerness to go out and do more things makes me feel like the ministry we're doing is important.
I love Josh's perspective on his ministry this summer. How many of us would have thought, oh man, I'm working in the kitchen, I can't believe this, I really wanted to be out in the front lines with the kids, or I wanted to do this or that, or whatever else, or just the mentality of, well, this is just a job. I'm not going to necessarily get much out of it, just a paycheck, whatever, but after the summer's over, at least, the bank account will be a little bit fuller. That wasn't Josh's perspective at all. When he came into it, first day as Manidokan staff member, he saw his role and place within the larger picture. So it's not just that he's flipping burgers or serving food or making amazing breakfasts, but rather that he became a servant to go into the world and to make this camp experience way better, not just for the campers that came through his line, but for the staff members, for every single person whose plate passed along his aisle. He made sure that he put his best foot forward, because that's a critical piece of the camp experience, of the gospel experience, of everything. When the scriptures that he used, talking about Jesus feeding the 5,000, the disciples kind of wanted to say, man, they've been following you for how long? They should have known to bring their food. They should have known to pack a lunch. They should have known to do these things. And Jesus says, whoa, whoa, whoa. But there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity here to show them, not only with our words what the kingdom is about, but also through our actions in serving them. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That at the very base levels, we have these really critical things, food and shelter and warmth and belonging and all of these things adding up to then that self-actualization is what he said. But I think that kind of tip of the iceberg, or that tip of the pyramid, then is kind of like our spiritual readiness and our hearts being ready for that gospel message. And like Josh talked about, his job was to make sure that they got the nutrition, the hydration, the calories that allowed those campers then to have a fantastic experience. We have to then, as the church, first and foremost, bring bread to people, or meet those most basic needs, before we could ever think about bringing them the bread of life that Christ offers us. When we start to meet those needs, so that then when we talk about the gospel and the good news, we aren't trying to scream over rumbling bellies or people who are in need of the most basic things. We prime that pump so that they can be ready to hear and see what God is doing in their lives. And that is exactly what Josh did this summer. With his heart to serve, we heard him talk about the ways in which, if Joseph didn't have that position, if he hadn't been put in that place, imagine what we would have missed out on. Imagine that his family would have missed out on these things. And so too, I know campers who came back from this summer, and Josh was the most powerful witness, not just because of the food, but because of the servant attitude that he had, that they were so blessed with. And so one of the questions that I would have you think about this week is, in what ways are you first and foremost giving bread to those that you serve? How are you asking the questions about what is actually and really needed? Not something that you think that they need, like, giving campers more vegetables and serving more vegetables on their plates wouldn't necessarily be the thing that they would eat. And so is that really something that we need to do more of? Or is that something that you just would think? So what are the real and actual needs of the people in the community that are around you? And how might you foster that? And then secondly, in what ways can you serve that bigger picture, knowing that you are part of a piece priming hearts for the gospel? And then the last thing, which Josh touched on, he said, now when I go back home after this food ministry experience, now I know how to make coffee. Now I know how I could work in the kitchen. Now I can take my experience here and translate that at home. In what way do you have a history and skills and resources that could be put to use in a way that aren't being used and that is a hole or a void of ministry? Because that might just be the spark somebody needs. That might just be the bread that somebody needs to then open their hearts to what God might be doing. And so as we think about that this week, as we think about that in the coming days or months, or as we start to even prepare for Thanksgiving, how might you serve and how might you go to not let other people think that it's just, their problem over here, but rather the ways in which Jesus said, you know what, this is an opportunity. Just like Josh said, I'm not here on the front lines, but I know that my part is critical in the camp experience. How are you critical in the unseen ways that allows people to see God moving new and fresh? Thanks a lot for being with us. And thank you, Josh, for giving us your word and testimony.